Well, on your screen is American University professor Jon Gould, who is a professor of law at the university, and he's also director of American University's Washington Institute for Public and International Affairs. And he's written this book, How to Succeed in College While Really Trying. Professor Gould, who is this book written for?
It's really written for two groups of students. It's written for high school seniors who are on their way to college, and it's also written for first-year students who come to this place and kind of find it somewhat foreign. I guess I should add it's also written for the parents of all of those students as well.
So when you're asked as a college professor, what will make my son or daughter successful? What's your short answer?
My short answer is a sense of independence and responsibility. And that's the kind of thing that sometimes parents may not want to hear because it means they have to pull back. So when we get them here at college, it is a chance for them to take ownership of their lives and be responsible for what they need to do. And that is the most important skill for them when they hit our doors.
What is your responsibility as a college professor to make that successful?
Well, my job is to challenge them. And that is something that sometimes people aren't quite ready for when they get here. We aren't here simply to hold their hands. Now, we want a friendly environment for them. This is the kind of place where we want them to feel that it's open to consider new ideas. But my job is to take them, give them some of those new ideas, but challenge them to think in new ways that they haven't before.
When you meet students, can you now predict who will be successful and who won't?
Oh, no. At first, not at all. Because the first time, they're all very pleasant. Most of the students we get are going to be successful. So that's the good news. But on the first meeting, no. It's almost impossible to predict who's going to be more successful than others.
What are some of the downfalls in your first year in college?
Well, there are lots and lots of distractions here or at any other university. So that's probably the biggest downfall, which is not paying attention to what they need to do. So not going to class, not getting assignments done, not doing the studying. That's the most important thing in terms of making sure that they have the best opportunity to succeed.
What's the most common question that students ask you?
What's going to be on the test? And that's simply not the right question to be asking. What they ought to be doing is they ought to be in class on a regular basis, engaging with us on the material. If they're there, if it's part of this dialogue that we're having day to day, they'll know what's on the test. They will have been part of that learning experience the whole way through.
Professor Gould, has personal technology changed how you teach?
Yeah, it has. And it's changed it probably for the better, but a little bit for the worse. And the way it's changed in the worse is we now have to compete with all these other sorts of calls on students' attention. So they come to class and they have their cell phones with them, their smartphones. There are lots of other things they can do if they are not excited about what's going on in class, and we need to compete with that. But at the same time, we can use technologies like Skype to bring the outside world into the classroom. We have these giant video monitors now that we can really make some of these things come alive for students and give them an opportunity to test what we're talking about in the classroom on these theoretical issues with what's really happening out there in the real world.
Is it important to give students letter grades?
Important for whom? Them or for others? I don't know that it really is that important. I don't find it to be as useful as others might, but students want them, and they want them because that's what they're used to. That's that they've all been competing for that, and they think that's what employers want. Frankly, I think we could get a whole lot more out of me writing evaluations of them in a more detailed way that talks about their strengths and weaknesses, what they brought to the table, more like a letter of recommendation than a letter grade.
Do you find a difference between students who take out loans, student loans, or students who have their parents pay for it or have?
Not that, but I do find a difference between students who work and those students who don't. So the students who are working, this is their money right then. The students who take out the loan, it is eventually going to be their money, but to them it's kind of somewhere in the future. Those who are working, they're putting in the sweat equity right now to get the education, and I think that they are generally more serious students, and they certainly demand more of all of us in the classroom.
In your book, How to Succeed in College, you have a chapter or subchapter, The Liberal Ivory Tower. Can a conservative student, a student who's conservative be successful at a Harvard, at an American, at a UPenn?
Well, absolutely. And I think let's go back and take that term. That term is in the book to dispel the myth. These are not bastions of liberalism that are unfriendly to conservatives. What we're after here at the university, if I'm doing my job right, any student who comes in here is going to have his pre-existing views challenged, whether they are liberal or conservative. Those kids are going to be challenged to think about what they really believe in, to take in the information we're offering, and to leave with their own view of the world. Now, if I'm doing my job right, that's what's happening. And that ought to be both exciting and probably to some extent a little frightening to students, no matter what their political perspective is, because ultimately we want them to be critical consumers of information, no matter what they end up believing.
But you do say in here that college professors and campuses tend to be more liberal than society in general.
But I also say that really that's not so much about being a college professor. Some of that is about generally people who have more education, who have PhDs, tend to be more liberal than others in society. There's also something about, I mean, let's face it, most of us who are college professors have decided that money is probably not the most important thing for us because we'd be out doing other sorts of things. Now, that said, whatever our perspectives are, whatever our ideologies are, and they vary. So you're going to find conservative professors throughout an institution as well as liberals. If we are doing our jobs right, our students don't know our ideology. And it also says in the book that the best compliment I ever got from a student was the one who had no idea what my ideology was until she came to babysit our kids one night and saw my wife's bumper sticker on my wife's car. Because what a really good professor does is take him or herself out, or his or her background, out of that conversation with the student. It's not about us, it's about them. And again, our job is to challenge them to be critical consumers of information.
Does tenure help students be successful? Does college professor tenure?
Well, I think tenure helps faculty to be successful, and if we're successful, they're going to be more successful. So this begs the question, well, what does tenure get? Tenure gets us freedom of inquiry. It allows us to look at what we think is important without having to worry about someone looking over our shoulders saying, oh, that's an unpopular idea. You know, if we're all worried about unpopular ideas, then we would not be today understanding gravity. We wouldn't be understanding the world as spherical as opposed to square. So that's what tenure gets us, and that gets then faculty who are able to really do a full inquiry, grow the knowledge, grow the science, and then students benefit from that, not only because we're able to impart that, but because students can participate in those research projects. So I think if I'm a critical consumer of higher education, if I really want my money's worth as a student, I'm in favor of that.
Professor Gould, what do you teach in the law school?
I teach criminal law in the law school. I actually also teach over in the College of the School of Public Affairs.
And what do you teach there?
There I teach law and society.
What sparked you to write How to Succeed in College?
It's a great question. So I've been teaching for over 20 years now. And I found that I was beginning to see some of the same problems from students over and over and over again. Things like not understanding how to cite material and inadvertently getting themselves into trouble with plagiarism. Freshmen who come in and see this great new world that is college and take advantage of everything about what's in the classroom. And I regularly email my students with hints and the like. And I began to see that I was sending the same emails out year after year. And I thought, you know what? It's time to write the book. That way I can just say, buy the book. I don't have to keep sending the emails out.
What's the best thing parents can do to prepare their kids?
Well, there are a couple of things that parents can do. So one is the academic side. And the best thing that students can do to be prepared for college is reading and writing. And I know that sounds so old school, but it is as true today as it was when I went to college in the olden days. That's the best thing that we can do to have them prepared. But the other thing parents can do is they can get the students ready to live their lives on their own. So we hear so much about helicopter parents today. Really, the most important things parents can do is get their students ready for the parent not to be there. So this is as simple as Okay, how do you do laundry if you're at college? But it's really much more to the point of